Hello and welcome to the Twitching of Isaac. In this tutorial video, we will be looking at Channel Point Redeems, a customizable points program offered by Twitch to streamers. The Twitching of Isaac allows automatic integration with channel points that will be set up each time you stream with the mod enabled in the Binding of Isaac. Since this is an integration with Twitch, you will only be able to configure Channel Point Redeems if this is available on your Twitch account. You must be an affiliate on Twitch to enable redeems at this time. The channel points integration offered by Twitching of Isaac allows you to set up custom redeems that are tied to both built-in commands, as well as custom commands that you configure for the mod. I will walk us through setting up 3 different channel point redeems in this video. For our first example, we will create a simple redeem for the built-in fart command. This command usually is typed by chat, and will trigger your character in the Binding of Isaac to fart in-game. From our dashboard page, let's click the channel points section. As you can see, I don't have any channel point redeems configured yet, so let's create our first one by clicking the Add New Channel Point Redeem button at the bottom of the page. You will now see the channel point editing window. In this window, we are presented with various input fields and toggles, many of which should be familiar if you have managed channel points on your Twitch channel before. Let's start by naming our redeem. Since this first example is to make Isaac fart, let's just name it fart. In the next field, we can set the channel point cost to redeem this action. I think 50 points is a fair price. Next up, we will enter the description of the channel point redeem. We want it to be something descriptive, so that the viewer redeeming this will know what they should expect. There, that should be descriptive enough. Now, we will select the fart command from the action dropdown, since we want to trigger that command when someone performs the redeem. Since the fart command doesn't expect any additional input, we will leave the action parameters field empty at this time. And we also don't require any user input, so we will leave the allow user input field in its default off state. I also don't want to limit the amount of times this command can be redeemed, so I will leave all of the limits at 0 for this example. Don't worry, we will review these fields in one of the other demonstrations later in the video. We will now save the redeem, but it looks like we got an error. It seems that Twitch Auto Mod doesn't like the word fart as a channel point redeem. I guess we will need to be creative on this one. I am going to replace the instances of fart with toot, and the channel point redeem should now save. Since the mod relies on Twitch for the integration, Twitch might have certain words banned from being used in their titles of descriptions for channel point redeems. As we just saw, the mod will test saving the redeem and notify you of any errors that might occur during the creation of a redeem. Now that the channel point has been saved, we need to make sure that we don't leave the chat command version of it enabled. Let's head back to our dashboard and then to the commands section. Once we find the fart command, we can disable it. We can now test this out by logging into the mod, and the channel point redeem will automatically be created for you. When you log out of the mod, the redeem will clean itself up and be deleted. For our second channel point redeem, we are going to make a command that gives the current playing character the C-section item. This item is pretty powerful, and we want to require channel points for giving this item. Let's start in the command configuration window for the give command. We don't want to fully disable the give command for other items. However, since we will be putting C-section behind a channel point redeem, we should ban it from being given from the command directly. We'll simply add C-section to the banned collectibles list and press save. Now chat will no longer be able to specify it as an item that can be directly given. One of the features of the channel point system in Twitching of Isaac is that it will bypass any bans or limits you place on a command directly. This allows you to limit what happens in a chat-issued command, while gating certain things off in a redeem. So let's create our channel point redeem. We'll name it, give it a cost of 2,500 points, set the incentive description, and finally set the action to the give command. So now let's talk about the action parameters field, as well as the allow user input toggle below. Some commands, such as the give command, expects an additional parameter to specify what item to give the player. We have 2 ways of approaching this. We can either manually specify the parameter in the action parameters field, or enable the toggle to allow user input. Channel points have the option to allow users to add an additional message when they are redeemed, and this message is what would then be used as the action input, if it were enabled. For this example, we will be leaving that option disabled since we want to be precise about the item being given in this redeem. Now that we have filled out the action parameters for this redeem, let's also set some limits to how many times and how often it can be redeemed. I am going to set the total redemption to only be 5 redeems per stream, while limiting any single viewer to only redeem it once per stream. And let's also set a 10-minute cooldown. All of these limits and cooldown options are enforced by Twitch directly. Finally, let's also talk about the last 3 toggle buttons on this window. The enabled toggle will simply enable or disable this redeem from being created for you. The auto cleanup toggle, which is by default enabled, will automatically delete the channel point redeems. This helps keep your redeems tidy when you might be streaming another game. One reason you might want to disable this feature is if you have customized the redeems on the Twitch interface, such as adding a custom image to the redeem. Unfortunately, at this time, Twitch does not allow setting an image on a channel point redeem from an external service such as the Twitching of Isaac, so this allows you to prevent it from being reset every stream. And finally, the auto redeem toggle, which is also enabled by default. To keep you and your moderators from having a full redeem queue, the auto redeem option will mark a redemption as redeemed automatically. This helps keeps things tidy. However, this also means you cannot refund their points if something went wrong with the redemption process, or if someone attempts a redeem when you are out of game. In that scenario, when auto redeem is enabled, they will have lost their channel points. If you prefer to be able to refund or keep an eye on redeems, you can disable this feature. Now when we click save, we will have our second channel point redeem configured. Finally, for our last demonstration, we will set a channel point redeem to activate a custom command. Here, we have created a custom command called RKey, which when executed will activate the RKey and reset the player to the first floor. For more information on custom commands, please check out our custom command tutorial videos on this channel. Just like regular commands, we will want to ensure that the command is disabled so that it cannot be run directly from chat. Now, we can go and create a channel point redeem as we have done in the past 2 demonstrations. Just like before, we will fill out all the basic information for the redeem, and maybe we should set this one to be a bit more expensive. Now when we click on the action dropdown, you will see that there is a subsection specifically for custom commands. Here we will see the RKey command that we made and can select it as the action. We don't need to fill out the action parameters field, nor do we expect any user input. We will however set this to a single redeem for the entire stream, and let's even set a 2-day cooldown on it. Once we hit save, you will have created your third channel point redeem for the Twitching of Isaac. Thank you for watching, and if you need any assistance, please visit us on the Twitching of Isaac Discord where we will be happy to help.